Theresa, welcome aboard to the show. So happy to have you on today.
Great to be here.
So this is going to be difficult because there's so many interesting things that we can talk about today that I don't even know where to start. But let's start with a little bit of math.
Oh, math.
I think you might know where I'm going with this. So you coined an equation: passion times purpose equals profits,
hmm
and that's coming from your book. Tell us a little bit about that equation, the book, and really how you got to that.
Okay, well, thanks for asking. It's interesting you started with math because my major in my undergraduate degree was mathematics. And so I do come in with a combination of the head and the heart. And so I began loving the word passion early on. It's one of my favorite words. And what I found from my life experience is when you combine passion with a meaningful purpose, extraordinary things happen and ordinary people become extraordinary. And so when I applied that to my entrepreneurial ventures, I decided, well, being an engineer first and mathematician first, I'd put a little formula. Passion times purpose equals profits.
So I want to break this down into two parts. One is yours, and then I think there's something incredibly interesting about what you talk about is the ability to apply this to other people. So I want to start first of all with you. What was the point in your life where you understood that this formula existed or applied to you? What was the moment you're like, oh, this makes a huge difference?
That's a great question. I I think it started early on. I like to think of my life divided into, I call them plans, just because they're sort of like phases. But I when I grew up in the suburbs of Chicago, in part of a large Polish Catholic family, I had this passion to distinguish myself and do something meaningful. And I figured out that if it was to be, it was up to me. And so that sort of became my mantra in life. And so from there, I um, was very fortunate to have certain opportunities or doors open for me. The harder you work, the lucky you are. So I would say that I'm a lucky person, but it started early. And then as I continued from the foundation plan to my first job out of college with Bell Laboratories and then AT&T product management, I think I learned, like we all do, you know, other things that helped me. And so passion was part of it. And it's interesting when I think of that, um, when people have called me the passion queen for a
I
long,
love that.
long time, and even my business partner for our first entrepreneurial venture, Radish Communication Systems, which we call Radish One, he knew I really loved passion, and luckily it took off from there.
Do you remember any point in your life where you came to the conclusion that the formula isn't working in this environment? I just don't have the passion for this specific thing, and you're like, look, the formula doesn't work here. I shouldn't be doing this.
Hmm. Well, yes. After I got my first job out of college and became a member of technical staff at Bell Laboratories, I loved it. I mean, I was had this opportunity to work with brilliant people designing and optimizing the performance of business telecommunication systems, and it was a wonderful growth experience. And they sent me on to get some more education. I'm really passionate about continuing education. But what happened one day is I didn't want to get out of bed and go into work. Now, this is not like me. I mean, I'm the kind of person, I jump out of bed and, I'm ready to go. And so I wondered what was wrong with me. And so I realized I needed a change. And so I initiated that with the company, and the company supported me as I moved from the R&D development side into the business marketing and product management side. And when I got to AT&T International in this product management role, it was like, oh, I was back on fire again. And part of that had to do with interfacing with people. I realized, while I love the head part, the analytical, the mathematics, the engineering, I love the heart side, the caring, deep relationships, and being in the business side for technology allowed me to do that.
You won't get any grief from me on this topic because I am a ex-hardware software engineer turned product manager. So we have a lot in common here.
Ah, so we have definitely a lot in common.
100%, and entrepreneur tech stars, but let's not go down that path. I'm interviewing you, not the not
Well, I
talking
think
about
these can
myself.
be an interesting discussion, to build on the commonalities that
That's
we
fair.
seem
That's
to
fair.
have experienced.
But I have a curiosity. So I think this is an incredibly important question, right? How do you make sure that the choices that you make, and we're still on the topic of you making sure that you have passion. The interview process is maybe 5 hours, right? When you're choosing a new employer. But
Mm,
those 5 hours are going to impact 2, 3, 4, 5, maybe more years of your life. How do you
hmm
make such an important decision
hmm
to make sure that the team, the environment, but really this thing that you're choosing with almost no knowledge, because 5 hours is no knowledge, is such an important decision, yet it's the right decision? How do you even approach that?
Well, surprise, surprise, I come into it with a analytical decision making approach. I remember sitting down when I was leaving with my bachelor's degree in mathematics, and I was very fortunate. I had interviewed with a number of companies. Now, my undergraduate school didn't really set up these interviews. I had to take the initiative, and I interviewed with AT&T Bell Labs and Lockheed and MITRE, and I had I went through a decision matrix, what were the elements that were important to me and which were the options. And I rated each of the factors on a 1 to 5 basis. How well did this location, this opportunity, this job have the right geographic location and allow me to continue to grow and learn. And so I went through this whole analytical analysis using some of the stuff I learned in math and came out with the option that had the highest rank. Then, however, I stopped and I said, okay, I needed to balance the head with the heart. And I'm a longtime meditator. I've been meditating since college. And so I sat back and I did like a little meditation and asked myself, my gut, which one had the highest ranking from my heart. Now, it was very fortunate. They both came out the highest. Bell Labs was the highest with the numbers, and it was highest with the heart.
Are you familiar with the Daniel Kahneman story about how he set up the exams for the military, for the Israeli military?
No, I'm not.
So he has this very meticulous. So Daniel Kahneman is the father of social psychology. He wrote the book Thinking Fast and Slow, and he basically has this very analytical process, right? That they need to ask certain questions of each military candidate, and then at the end he asks the interviewers. He says, "Close your eyes and think of a score. What would you give this person?" So it's
Uh-huh.
amazing how you have such a similar process. Um, he tried to take it out later because he kind of scientifically proved that close your eyes and give it a store didn't really matter, didn't correlate. So we're doing these interviews. um, absolutely did not let him do that. They would not allow him to take it out. They
Huh?
adamantly wanted to keep that process. It
Huh?
meant so much for them. So that's so interesting that you have a similar process.
Well, but the thing that you said, which was very interesting, is you said he wanted to take it out because
Yeah,
he didn't think it correlated. Now,
yeah,
for me, the head and the heart did correlate, and it was so important to have that alignment. But you're saying that it didn't necessarily always align in that case.
yeah. So think about this way, right? There's thousands of these people being interviewed every month by dozens of these interviewers, and over the years, a lot of data has been accumulated, and then you also see performance by the superior officers. So he
Mm.
went back and did all that analysis, and it was like, well,
Hmm.
the questionnaire was good enough.
Oh,
The So he basically
huh.
did this massive, large N kind of research, and it was like,
Okay.
well, we don't need that, so we can take it out. But
Hmm.
he did need it for different reasons. He just didn't see it, I guess.
Well, I'm glad he kept it in there.
He had no choice. You know what's also interesting is that I think it was 30 or 40 years later, they tried to redo his system and they put a new system in place. They ripped it out and put the old one back in place. His has been around for, what is it now, like 80 years, something like that.
Wow. Well, I'm a firm believer if it ain't broke, don't fix
Don't
it,
fix
you
it. Yeah.
know? I think there's sometimes, especially in entrepreneurial environment, maybe you saw this, especially like the VCs, it's like, oh, we want the young whippersnappers, we think that they are the most creative and whatever. And I think they are underestimating the power of experience combined. We don't lose our innovative curiosity. And so I I think you have to look at a range of people and ages and such,
I,
and old techniques as well as new.
I would agree with that. And my favorite book to recommend to people is The Good and Old, How to Influence People and Make Friends. So I would
Oh,
definitely
how
Dale
to make
Carnegie.
friends and influence people.
Yeah,
Yes, that is a good one.
absolutely. So we talked about the kind of how you can make these good decisions. Now you're in a new organization, senior executive level. How do you help people get to their best selves, their highest level of performance, make sure that the equation of passion works for them?
Hmm. Well, I bring my pursuit of passionate purpose formula, which is based on not only my experience, but also research of interviewing, aiding people from all walks of life into my work situations. I use it as my leadership framework, and it includes 4-phase model. Where you start, I call it the Szczurek process because I want people to remember my name. Um, and so it starts with finding your passion. Who are you? Aligning that with a meaningful purpose. Second step. Third is to pursue that with all your heart, with all your soul, persistently, with a plan, with the right people. Do you think I like P words? Until you, in the fourth phase, establish and find progress. And then you sit back and you look at that progress, but you may make some mid-course corrections. And so when I'm getting back to your question, working with people, first of all, I hire people who I believe have passion. If you were going to start a fire, you wouldn't try starting it with wet wood. Well, you don't start a company or a project or an with wet people. You want them to be on fire. You want people to have the ability to be on fire. So I will ask people about their passions in interviews, and I want to see that spark. Now, they may not know exactly how to apply that spark, and you can actually take that passion and apply it to other people's purposes. You find that a lot. People will jump on the bandwagon, but they have to be able to align with this purpose so that they make a choice. And then I help them figure out how to pursue it. So I introduce the Pursuit of Passion and Purpose process, and I will, in little doses, introduce it and talk about it. And because I know from my life experience and my research, it works.
Let me play the devil's advocate here. A lot of people are not necessarily happy about their job, not necessarily passionate about it. Is this even possible for many people? I mean, taking the risk of leaving their job, or is it something they need to change in their job, or is it even possible if you don't have the right social management leadership environment? Is this always possible to a certain degree, or is it you kind of have to be lucky to be able to get this passion in your environment?
Well, I think life is short and death is sure. My mother always said that. And so, do you want to go through this one life? I mean, I believe there's life after, but we don't know. And so, do you want to go through it miserable? And so, I try to encourage people to unleash that inner, wiser, older self and allow it to speak to them. Now, you can actually, even if you don't have the best boss, or maybe you're in a situation where it's not a good time to leave your job, you have responsibilities or whatever, but you can do things that will minimize the impact of what I call improper people, improve the impact of proper people. You can do things to have 4 elements. Now, this actually aligns with the 4 phases of the Pursuit of Passion and Purpose process. When people get a sense of meaning, they get that from passion. When they get a sense of choice, they align that passion with purpose, with choice. If they get a sense of competency, they're doing something well. And 4th, they get a sense of progress towards some goal. That will stimulate intrinsic motivation. Now, intrinsic motivation is linked with engagement and satisfaction. And so I think that, you don't have to have the absolute optimal job. You can find it where you're at, or if you are not finding it there, you might have enough courage and confidence to go on your way and leave and find it somewhere else.
I'll go to kids for a second, because I feel like what you're saying is profoundly valuable beyond the work environment. It's kind of the ABCs of leadership. So I, for a long time, was trying to force my daughter to do this project, and my son was around math and then computer programming, and just failing one after the other. And then I took a different approach, and I was like, well, what do you want to do? So I got a check mark on the choice. And then it was something she was passionate about. She likes writing poems. So I got the check mark on the meaning. And then I was like, okay, let's do baby steps. She started to read a book about how to write poems. And we got a check mark on this kind of baby steps, on progress, on competence, because she is quite good. And then we also put this incentive design that if this is me cheating here. If I said no to a cat for ages, and I said, if you actually publish, you get picked up by a publisher and you write a book of poems, then you'll get a cat. So, and she has been doing her, like, writing her poems and reading her book every single day. I didn't have to say anything.
Oh,
Well,
wow.
before it was me shouting at her, have you done your book today? Being a terrible father. And then that just completely changed after I kind of figured out those 4 steps. So it's incredibly, incredibly important. And I really appreciate you walking us through it. I would say this is not about only, helping yourself get there. It's also helping other people, whether it's your children or your employees, or maybe even your boss, leading
Yes,
up.
it is true. It applies to everyone. And I especially tell parents, notice the things that help your children get really excited, enthused, that they're on fire. And I'm a Girl Scout leader, and I do that with my Girl Scouts as well. I ask them, what are you interested in? How can we help you? And, I think it goes to that book, go with your strengths, and that ultimately will lead to more happiness. It's lined with competency, because if you're enjoying it, you're going to do it more, and you're going to get better, and you're confident, and that gives you a little pat on the back. And so, yeah, it applies to all people in all walks of life at all ages. And so that's why my book, I say, success strategies for a rewarding personal and business life.
I wish we had this conversation about 2 years ago. You would have saved me a lot of grief. So I figured that when it worked with my daughter, I was like, I need to do this exact same thing with my son. Now I figured it out with him. So it's this idea of choice and passion. You can't just dictate it for other people. You have to let them, take that part. So important.
Exactly. It really makes a difference. So I'm so glad you figured that out. And I do that with my coaching clients who I mentor and advise and coach it. And I will bring in this pursuit of passionate purpose approach and help them on their way.
Wonderful. What is the biggest insight from coaching the Girl Scouts that it's a leadership skill that you feel you have to give the girls when they're young that will give them, let's call it, the biggest bang for the buck as adults? So what is the thing that you really see kind of changes them as people?
Great question. Girl Scouts has a mission to help girls develop courage, character, and confidence in order to make the world a better place. And so one question is, well, how can we, in this environment, stimulate courage, character, and confidence? And one of the important things is to let them do things, to be girl led. They actually set up with selling cookies, their own cookie business. Oh, I saw my daughter transform from this shy little girl who wouldn't, knock on the neighbors' doors to where she had years later a thriving cookie business selling thousands of packages of cookies. So you have to help them understand that they can do it and they can do it well. And even if they, fail a little bit, well, what did you learn from it? Let's try it again. And then build that confidence. And so, it's an important thing to let them do it themselves. And I think, as parents or even as managers, right? We see our people having a hard time. We want to run in there and save them. Well, you don't want to let them fall off the cliff. Okay.
Yeah.
But, let them have a hard time. Let them learn to pick themselves up by the bootstraps.
What does your daughter reflect on her cookie empire building experience? What was her, best and worst moments?
Well, she actually went through all of Girl Scouts from the time she was 5 until graduating high school, and she, of course, she had a mom who was the leader of the troop, but she knew that she was learning and growing. And I'll tell you, she went on to get her gold award, which is the highest award earned in Girl Scouts. And she did it when she was a sophomore in high school, where a lot of Girl Scouts will delay until they're like a senior. But because she had done it as a sophomore, so she doesn't procrastinate. She takes after her father that way. And she was able to, her junior and senior year, become the leader of the troop. Oh, wow. And so through that process, she had all these experiences, which she was able to use on her college applications, which actually gave her the ability to be, selected for a lot of good colleges. But I remember one time there was a big decision that needed to be made. Our troop was running an outdoor skills camp, and we were doing it as a fundraiser, but also as a public service for the younger Girl Scouts. And there was a huge blizzard coming in.
Hmm.
And the Girl Scouts of Colorado Council called us and said, listen, we're canceling all of the events in the council this weekend because the blizzard's so bad. And so they said, what do you think about canceling your outdoor skills day camp? And I was on the phone, and they said, well, wait a minute, your daughter's in charge of this camp, isn't she? And I said, yes. And so they said, well, we want to talk to your daughter, not you. And so my daughter made the decision to go with the camp.
Oh, wow.
So, given that responsibility and the fact that people respected her and asked her decision, she made the decision. We went through the camp. It didn't snow that badly, and it was a success. So she learned, she had the ability, she had judgment, she had the ability to make good decisions. And so that really has been very, very helpful for her. And I'm very proud that she learned good things and she's been using them now in her life.
That's quite an incredible story. I do RILA, which is a Rotary Children Leadership thing.
Yes. Well,
And we
I'm a
had,
Rotarian too.
oh, wonderful. Well, there
Yes.
you go. Another topic for us to talk about. So unfortunately, during COVID, I was in front of the board of directors and I said, no, it's not going to be RILA. It's not going to be the exact thing that we have always done, but we need to do something. Fortunately, the board basically took the safe route and voted against. But I at that moment, I needed your daughter to say, no, we're gonna do this. We're gonna do it. It's gonna be awesome. I'm here in
Right.
Colorado as well, by the way. So
Oh, and
unfortunately,
my daughter did RILA at that
oh,
same
wonderful.
through Rotary at that same camp, and it was a life-changing experience for
It
her.
really
So
is.
thank you for your volunteer work there, because it does make a difference. Both young RILA, the Rotary Youth Leadership
Award. Yeah.
Award.
Yeah. I truly think so. It's not a very well-known program, but I think it's quite an amazing program. So I was very curious, and this is a very sharp change of topic, but we're running out of time. This has been so much fun that we've run out of time. So I did want to go back to one thing. You talk about getting on a board as part of a development process. Give us your very short spiel on why to do this, how to do this, and some tips or tricks. And I'll selfishly say that it's a personal thing for me as well. So
Okay.
I'd love you to give me some tips and our
Right.
audience as well.
Well, okay. Why should you consider getting on a board? See, board of trustees are the highest level of decision making for an organization. They help set the strategy, they help approve the budget, they help hire the CEO of the organization. So I have wanted to be operating at the board level for decades. I mean, this was one of my goals. So why do it? You can make a bigger impact. And my view is to make the biggest impact I can in this life on the world. So, how do you go about doing it? Well, first of all, like in anything, you set an intention of wanting to consider board work. And then I believe, and I talk about the attraction strategy in my book, Pursuit of Passionate Purpose, you put out to the universe that you want to attract board opportunities. And then you use your head, your heart, your hands to try to attract those to you. So, what does that mean? That means you set the intention and then you tell people you're interested in this and you decide you're going to learn about how you can get on boards. For example, I've become involved in the Private Directors Association, and one of the things we do is help train and educate people who want to become board members on what it means to be a board member. Okay. And so you surround yourself with others who are knowledgeable. And then through that process, you learn how to develop the right materials, and you do networking, and you talk to people who are on boards. I highly recommend that you start by getting on a nonprofit board. And it's interesting, through Rotary in Boulder, one of the vice presidents of a big tech firm came up to me and he said, "Theresa, I'm on the board of the Boulder Technology Incubator, which later became the Colorado Technology Incubator. Would you consider being on our board?" And I was thrilled. I was honored. And I said, "Well, I need to learn more about it, but yes." And so by being who I was, but also putting these vibes out there, people came to me, and I got onto this nonprofit board and met so many people who have helped me along the way. So those are some the hows and some of the tips and tricks.
So there's only one scripted question, even though our guests don't know that there is this one scripted question. There's one scripted question in the show, and it's a hard one because it's personal. If you had to go back to 20-something-year-old Theresa, what would you advise her?
Wow. I would advise my 20-year-old self that it's not only the head, the getting straight A's, the working really hard on all of my courses and such, that is important. But it's also the balance of that with the relationships along the way. And that is that the major conclusion of my research study and book is it is the pursuit of passionate purpose, as well as the attainment of the goal, and the connections along the way that bring the real meaning and satisfaction to life. And so it's the balance of the pursuit, which is the contribution, how you make the contribution through like what I consider some of the head, as well as the connections, the heart that you want in life. And I think it took me a while to realize that. And I thank goodness I discovered that and was able to bring more of those relationships and love into my life, because ultimately you're more successful in everything when you have both of those.
Honestly, I feel very strongly about what you just said. I wish I learned that earlier in life as well. And I think the first moment that I applied that was when I left a startup that I founded with a friend, and I said, "Hey, I want you to be successful because the only thing I want to take away from this relationship is the friendship that we have created."
Oh,
And we gave him all of the equity that we had, and we sent him to be successful. Um,
oh
so
wow.
I wish I learned that lesson earlier in life. So maybe if there's
Mm,
younger viewers listening to us and they take that away, that's a huge
mm.
one. I would definitely agree. Theresa, thank you so much for joining the show today. This has been absolutely delightful. I appreciate you.
Thank you so much. And I would like to tell your listeners to go to my website. I have a pursuit of passionatepurpose.com. I have 20 years of free complimentary knowledge and newsletters, but also you could go to my business, tmsworld.com. And I would love to see if there's ways that I could be of service and help
You
any
know,
of your listeners.
a lot of people are their strategy is to put out garbage on social media. Very few people put out articles which incorporate deep thinking and really good quality. And I'll tell all our listeners that that's what you can find in Theresa's website and LinkedIn. Um, I really appreciate that strategy as opposed to some garbage short video that's just trying to get views. So I'll put my stamp of endorsement on
Oh,
your content as well. I appreciated it.
thank you so much.
Wonderful. Theresa, thank you so much for coming on the show today. I appreciate you.